everybody. This is Role Reversal Sunday again. This is Darren Redmond and with Brian Rivera, who usually hosts Sunday Conversation with Fresno Sports Talk. We both want to wish you all a happy new year. And we want to talk to Brian about so many of the local sports stories that are happening. Brian, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Darren. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, excellent. No, are you kidding? No, I feel very fortunate. So let's talk a little bit about Monday's championship football game. TCU, underdog. Are they just happy to be there? Georgia, defending national champions. What's your thoughts?
I think the TCU's just got to just take it like another football game. I think if you go in there too lackadaisical or just too happy to be there, might get your barn doors rolled off, right? But I think if you're going in there with a mindset that you got a chance to win, it's going to be fun. It's going to be good to watch.
So, how do you, as a coach, stop your team from being overwhelmed by the moment, but at the same time, don't pretend that the moment's not big? I mean, I don't think that's helpful either, where you pretend it's not a big event. So, what do?
You as cliche as it is you treat it just like another football game. Mm-hmm. I've told you this a couple times already. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, and Kobe's big thing is this is what you prepare for. This is what you spend your summers doing. He spends all this time in the gym training, working out, taking basketball shots, right? Mm-hmm. This is why you go to the gym every day during the summer, why you run your wind sprints, why you catch those 1,000 balls a day, or throw those 5,000 balls a day, or kick those 1,000 balls a day. This is why you play the game, right? But at the same time, once the ball gets kicked off the tee to start the game, it just becomes another football game, and it's just got something more elevated attached to it than right. That's what makes it scary for everybody.
So we were talking a little bit personally off air about preparing, and it's just a game kind of thing, this or that. But you probably have well-meaning parents, well-meaning friends. Hey, I know you're busy this week, but how do you block all that out? Especially when you're 18, 19, 20, 21.
It's tough. It's not easy because you see it at any special event. Like we just, for us as hockey fans, we just saw the Winter Classic, mm-hmm. Right? And when you go back and look at them, not very often does the home team win.
Right.
This year was a anomaly. Boston won at home, but for the most part, the way because of, just like you said, family and friends are in for the big event, it makes it's hard to focus. There's no doubt to it, but I think that's what makes you a professional athlete as well.
Right. And even these kids in college right now, by now, hopefully and I know this is going on, good coaches, because you do it when you're coaching the younger kids. You teach them already about trying to block things out and staying focused on the game at hand. So, I know when I played in college, and I just played Division III, you'd sometimes have weeks where your routine was interrupted by well-meaning parents and this and that. And the coach would always do a good job, say, hey, stay focused on what you're doing. Stay focused on what you're doing.
Sure.
So
you still have to take it as there's a job to be done, mm-hmm. Right? And yes, these kids are in their late teens, early 20s, and but I think they at that age they know what's in front of them, right? And they know that they it's something special that they want to be prepared for, and be ready to play.
So I don't need a score, but any prediction? TCU or Georgia? What do you think?
I think Georgia's going back to back. I think they're going to win again this year, and I don't know. On my part, I guess I didn't watch. I was kind of not too much in on TCU. I was in on a couple other teams and really didn't watch them. But watched. I've watched Georgia a couple times, and if the running game's not there by one person, they got another back that they can throw in there. And if that
Right.
doesn't work, they got the quarterback that can sling it all over the field. So
You're a Michigan guy, right?
yes, I am a Michigan guy.
What happened?
Um,
And I don't mean that like a snotty. I mean that as a
no, I
because I had them winning.
so did I, and I think there was that questionable touchdown. I think it was late in the second quarter where the guy who caught it kind of right at the goal line or whatever, and I think they let that get to them emotionally and they couldn't recover, and then they lost their big horse and their running back. He wasn't playing in the game. He had torn ligaments in his knee, and he was their horse. They rode him all season long, and then they just didn't have enough to get it done.
Staying on football, and here locally where you and I are in Fresno, Jake Hanna was invited to the combines. What are your thoughts?
I think that's good for him. It's obviously going to be good for the Fresno State program that they're getting another quarterback an opportunity to get to the NFL, with their system and everything else. But I think Jake Hanna may turn some heads.
I think so too. And this is sort of one of those. I get on the podium and people say, "Oh, he just had a cup of coffee." What do you say to those people who kind of dismiss a player for having a cup of coffee in the NFL, NHL, MLB, whatever?
Hey, we could joke about all the time. Oh, he only did this, he only did that. That's better than 95, 98% of the rest of the world in that position. So kudos to him. Like I said, you can joke about it and say, "Oh, that's nothing," but would I trade spots with them? Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
I mean, you and I have had many cigars over many years on a Saturday night, and I shared with you something Ron Darling said. That guy that you dismiss as a cup of coffee player in your neighborhood would have been the greatest player you've ever seen, and wouldn't be close.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely,
I wish him well, and hopefully it'll be a lot more than a cup of coffee. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think he can, if he finds the right organization. I can see him turning some heads for sure.
You and I both reside in Fresno, California, and that's sort of sacred ground for San Francisco Giant fans because the Grizzlies used to be associated with the Giants, but also a lot of Dodger fans. You got a few Angel fans, but it's usually Dodgers, Giants, and some A's fans. You broadcast with an A's fan, John English. What are your thoughts on Justin Turner going to the Red Sox?
I like it. Well, for two reasons. Selfishly, it's going to make the Dodgers a little easier to play against as a Giants fan. But good for Justin Turner to go out and get what he deserves. He's been, I don't want to say underrated here, out here on the West Coast, but he definitely hasn't been in the spotlight. He's kind of been under the radar a little bit. Everybody knows, we play the Dodgers 19 times a year or whatever it is. And we know 19 times in a season that he's going to be a thorn in our side because he's a damn good baseball player. And he's quietly been doing it out here on the West Coast. And so now it's good for him that he gets that contract and gets to play for that organization out on the, East Coast of Boston there that's chasing the Yankees all over the field.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that the moment never got too big for him. It just never did it?
Yeah, no, he just knew that at some point that he was going to be successful, and it didn't have to be in the first inning with two people on. It could have been in the ninth inning or in the eighth inning with two guys on. He just knew at some point, if the game was going to be won and Justin Turner was coming up, he was going to get the job done.
So take out your crystal ball. Where does Brendan Belt end up?
Wow, I haven't even. I know, knowing that Bruce Bochy's in Texas now managing there,
Ooh, wow.
and Brandon being from Texas, I could see him going to the Rangers, maybe platooning at first base and playing DH, and sticking
What
with
a great spot for him. Wow, that's a bombshell. I can see definitely
I don't know anything about the Rangers. They could have a DH already. They could have a first baseman already,
right.
But Belt, he's serviceable too, also in the outfield. So he's got a few different options for him. So I can see him maybe going for the Rangers and reuniting with Bruce Bochy and finishing his career there, or another year or so there.
Excellent. So I want to ask you a little bit about, I mean, we'll take a little bit of time here with this one, the Derek Carr situation, not David Carr, Derek Carr. You've had strong opinions about Derek for years because I know you, and it was never negative. You kind of talk about, if I could set the stage a little bit, how tough it is to play in front of your home fans and some other things. So when you see what happened and what's transpired this week with Derek Carr with the Raiders, what are your thoughts?
I really kind of thought it was a bad spot for him to end up with the Raiders in the first gig, in the first place, because I just didn't see just a good fit in the organization for Derek, right? Bulldog fans here thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and don't get me wrong, he had a great career here at Fresno State, but Bulldog fan is Raider fan, and so they thought he was just going to step right up into Oakland and do the same type of things that he did, not realizing that when you step into the National Football League, that you're playing the top 1% of every position, 60 downs a game, 16 games a year, and at that point, the Raiders, he was supposed to be the savior for the Raiders. He was going to bring them back to glory.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think he ever got the fair, and not saying a fair shot from the organization, but the fair shot from the fan perspective of what a quarterback he could be in. Right. Or what, something along those lines.
And again, there's a lot of truth to the fact that many, many different coaches and a lot of the other things, they use the word fair. The reality, unfortunately, is nothing's fair. I mean, there's just reality.
Right.
Things that happen, and maybe if he would have had a different coaching, maybe, who knows? But the truth is, it is what it is. And sometimes a separation like this is a good thing for somebody. In Raider history, Jim Plunkett wins a couple of Super Bowls with the Raiders after he was jettisoned as a bust by the Patriots.
Yeah, it just, and so forth. Derek hasn't had a bad career, right? It's not a bad career, but I think it could have been better in a different situation. Right. I think he may not have had the success right off the start per se, but I think he would have grown into his role on a different team at a different pace, and that had to be the spotlight right off the start. And I think he would have been better off for it a little bit, right? Because as the quarterback of the Raiders, what's that bring you? That brings you the spotlight.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
And again, not a bad career.
No.
He's top in so many indices already in terms of touchdowns or games played or whatever the case may be. But it'll never be enough here.
Yeah, exactly.
So he needs
Yeah.
probably to go somewhere else.
The
And we wish him well.
expectations were just the expectations from the fan base were just too much.
The last thing I want to ask you about is the unfortunate situation that happened with Damar Hamlin. And it seems like right now he's on his way to recovery. Let's hope that's the case. And what are your thoughts when people are talking about, well, granted, we understand and we want him to be healthy, but they get upset about this potential coin flip, neutral site, all this other things, and they lose perspective that somebody almost lost their life. But I also want to delve a little deeper as somebody who's coached kids, coach young men. How do you handle that with your team when you see something so devastating on the field or on the ice?
Well, you know, right now, as you're asking me this question, you use the best word possible, and that was perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's step back away from the whole situation. And what's the one thing that everybody associated with sports and wants for this kid is to have a complete bill of health.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's the first and most important thing out of this whole situation. And anytime anybody gets hurt, is you want them to be able to come back and have that same sort of lifestyle that they had before the injury, regardless of, you're you hate the Buffalo Bills or you hate Damar Hamlin for whatever reason. The kid sounds like an amazing individual right now. He had those foundations and what Bill's Mafia has done for those foundations, and even the sporting world. Those people get it. And I'm not saying the people that are all upset about the coin flip or they got to go play the neutral site. It's a kid healthy,
100%.
right? Put the game aside. It's a game important. You sure? Yeah, sure, fine, whatever. But let's make sure that this kid gets a good bill of health and he's able to come back and play football again, or to have a normal life. Even if he can't play football, let's get back to where you can have a normal lifestyle.
Agreed.
You become for an injury, like you said, coaching. I've seen kids, get concussions. I've seen kids get their arms sliced open with a skate. Me as a player in practice battling with a guy, I slid a guy's Achilles tendon, just in practice on accident, just battling, doing drills along the boards. Yeah. All you care about at that point, I think I would have been is making sure that the person's healthy, right? That they can come back and make sure that they can able to do everything, right? I think I would have been more upset if they finished that game or scheduling this game to go back and make those guys get back into that situation again. It's bad enough that they got to do it now in a normal circumstance, in a normal week, whether it was, playing Saturday night or playing Sunday, whatever the regular game is. It's bad enough that it's just 5 or 6 days out that they got to do it again. But to force them to go back to that stadium and like I said, or that city, and that's nobody's fault. We all understand that. But there's still mental health for these athletes that overtakes any sport or any field or anything. It's the most important thing.
Besides the ridiculous comments for clickbait that Skip Bayless, in my opinion, put out this week, I'd like for you to put on your coaching hat with youth sports. And there's no easy answer here. Because the first thing I thought of when I saw the injury to Damar, we both played baseball. to me, that was almost a baseball injury. And you see it sometimes in hockey too. In baseball, that line drive to a kid's chest, that kind of thing. And I get nervous just talking about it. What do you, as just a suggestion to youth coaches out there, to a kid who watched that play happen or watches for the first time a devastating injury on the ice? We've both seen, you've seen more than me. What advice do you give to the player, to the parent, about not putting too much fear in the kid's head, but understanding the mental health is so important, that acknowledging their fear? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Man, I think what it just becomes is you just you sit the team down, your child down, wherever, however you want to handle the circumstance, but you sit down and you have a conversation, and you talk about, yes, there are some severe injuries that can happen, but if you respect the game and respect the way that you play the game, and you play the game the right way, it does become an accident rather than something that people say. And I missed this whole play. I still haven't seen it, and
You don't. There's no need to. Trust me.
Right?
You've seen it in your head. That's the way I look at it. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah. No, I haven't seen it. I've had someone explain it to me yesterday from work, and he described it as a pretty benign play that you would see on a daily basis.
Just lower the shoulder into the guy's chest. That's it.
Okay. So, then it becomes, it really becomes just an accident. It just becomes, I don't want to say it in such a dull term, but it just becomes part of the game, right? You understand that you are going to get injured, some more severely than others, but it's just something that happens in the game, and you have to be able to know that the player, the child's got to know that if he's having problems, that it's not a character assassination on the player, right?
That's so important. I was going to, absolutely. I knew you'd go there.
That it's something to know that if he needs some help with that, the door to whoever has got to be open to go in there and let his feelings be known, and his, whether he's scared or whatever, his emotions are addressed.
100%. If this is me talking now and you want to follow up on it, that's fine. If you're that coach, that youth coach, that tells that young woman or that young boy, that young male, hey, toughen up, it's part of the game, get out there, you shouldn't be coaching. You just shouldn't be coaching.
No, right now, with the way athletes are, their size, their speed, anytime a kid tells me that he's hurt, I don't care what their parent says. I'm going to err on the side of safety and not put him back in the game. Whether it's as little as a jammed finger, or or a hangnail, or whatever, as little. Mm-hmm. If that player does not want to go back in the game, I'm not going to force him to go.
Correct.
Because if something happens to that kid, and I know that I put him out there while he didn't want to be out there, and he's partially injured, that's going to sit with me for a long time, and I'm not going to be good with myself.
Well, that's why you're the good person that you are, and again, guilty as charged of being a very good friend of yours. But and what we don't understand too is we talk about physical size. We also need to talk about emotional maturity and this and that, and kids just develop differently. And
Oh, yeah.
and there are some kids that like to go to a horror film. There are some kids that can't go to a horror film. It doesn't make them better or worse. And it might be a bad comparison, but it's somewhat similar to say, if a kid now can't play or wants to sit a game out or two, let them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If a parent, anyway, if the parent says, "Hey, little Johnny hurt his ankle at school 4 days ago.
Mhm.
I don't want him to do anything for the next 3 weeks." Okay, fine.
Right. Right.
I'm not going to force anybody to do anything.
Mhm.
The doctor says he can't play for 4 to 6 weeks. Well, let's go tape it up. No, doctor says 4 to 6 weeks. Bring me a doctor note says he can play. Then
Right.
I'll be safe.
Right.
Right. But yeah, I'm just as a coach, you don't want to take that. For me, you don't want to take that risk.
Right. It's just there's no value in it. You're
No,
not
there's
teaching
there's so much more
anything.
things that are way more important than just a game we play recreational on the weekend.
Yep. Yeah. So before I let you go, what do you think the biggest sports story of 2022 was?
Whoa. You throw that one. That's a
Yeah,
curveball.
I just thought of that. So
Wow, because I wouldn't even know where to start because there's so many sports that happen throughout the world that I have one.
right.
Unfortunately,
I
no
mean,
interest.
in your view, in your view, in
Yeah, but even then, I couldn't even think back to so much.
well, that's good in a way because there's so
So
much
much
to
has
talk about.
happened. But I guess I'm going to go a little biased for me, right? And
That's I'm smiling. I think I know your answer.
it's just, I guess, the way the Colorado Avalanche dominated through the playoffs, and only losing 4 games in 4 series, to capture the Stanley Cup. And yes, they were a good team. They were a dominant team all year, but to have that kind of run in the playoffs, that's really something special.
You know, that's the answer I was thinking that you were going to give, and take this from a perspective of a lifelong New York Ranger fan. I don't think the Avalanche get enough credit for what they did because they dominated the league without that superstar. They literally played team hockey. And I forgot the fact that they only lost 4 games in 4 rounds. They dominated from start to finish. There were injuries along the way. Talk a little bit about that team concept. And I would say that they were the story of sport, for me, the sports story of 2022.
Too, and as I think about it a little bit more, even you talk about the Los Angeles Rams winning at SoFi Stadium on their home, winning the Super Bowl on their home field,
Right,
which has
home
never
field.
been done, in NFL history, because no one's ever made it there. But you look at that, you put those two teams side by side and winning their sports league title, and they're probably two of the most word definition team
True. Good call.
um in the year in sports. you know um they used the Rams. They had some dominant players on offense, but they also had some dominant players on defense, right? Colorado's the same way. They had a dynamic, they got a dynamic forward in Nathan McKinnon and a dynamic defenseman in Cale Makar. But knowing the hockey like I know it, you win your series with your third and fourth lines. And we've talked about this numerous times, throughout our cigar nights and everything else, is your depth is what wins championships. And these two teams were the biggest definition of team because they had those yes, they had superstars, but they had those guys down low that were unknown that just kept coming game after game and producing it and making those other guys look that much better because they were taking that now it's another thing another team has to worry about.
Yeah, because I know a few Colorado Rocky fans. We'll sign off on this. You and Kala, and you kept waiting for that shoe to drop, and it never dropped.
Yeah, I was very, very hesitant all year that something was gonna they're just not ready. They're just not ready. But they got to learn how to win. You have to learn how to win, especially at the higher levels. It takes, you know, some time to build that winning thought, that winning tradition, that winning whatever you have in your program. And Colorado hadn't had it because just 4 or 5 years ago they were the laughing stock of the league with the worst record, and only having I think less than 20 wins in a season. Right. So for them to turn it around so quickly, it was pretty special.
What a great way to end this conversation. Brian, thank you for being my guest.
You're welcome, Paul. Anytime.